Okay, so one of the things we pride ourselves is on starting the events on time and finishing on time. So it's 5 p.m. India time, and we are starting with our startup investor perspective session. So thank you so much everyone for joining in. I'm Jatin. I'm one of the co-founder of eChai Network. This particular program is part of the CoRise Summit, which eChai Network and Wadhwani Foundation are organizing. This is our sincere and committed effort to bring diverse set of speakers from all over the world and interact with the founders from. So with eChai, just a brief context, this is our 12th year for us. For a very, very long period, 8-9 years, it remained in just Gujarat. Suddenly something happened in last 2 years and we were able to start physical chapters in 25 global cities. And that is going really, really well. So this summit is in a way showcase of what we were able to do in last 2 years, starting chapters everywhere. With this, my background, Ankit is with Wadhwani Foundation. Ankit, if you can briefly introduce Wadhwani Foundation.
Sure. Thanks, Jatin. Hello, everyone. On behalf of Foundation, I welcome you all for this session. A quick intro about Foundation. It's a not-for-profit organization working with a mission to accelerate economic development in emerging economies, driving large-scale job creation through entrepreneurship, skill development, and innovation. Today, it's founded by Dr. Ramesh Wadhwani, Silicon Valley serial entrepreneur. Today, the foundation is present in 25 countries across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And we are very happy to co-host this CoRise Summit along with eChai.network. And once again, thank you for joining for this session. And over to you, Jatin, now.
Awesome. So friends who are watching this video on social media or on Zoom, if you have any questions, you can ask in the comments, or we'll be sharing the LinkedIn and Twitter threads. So if you can take up more question in case we are not able to ask this in the session. So we'll just get started. So a fantastic set of panelists who are joined in, who are very prominent investors. So we'll just get started with a brief introduction. Nadia, if you can briefly introduce yourself and your firm.
Sure. So, hi everyone. I'm Nadia. So, I work for a VC called Gobi Partners. I'm actually based out of Indonesia, but us as a firm, we actually started in China in 2002. So now we do China. We manage the Alibaba Fund in Hong Kong, and we also do Southeast Asia and Middle East. So we manage $1.1 billion AUM. So in Southeast Asia itself, we actually do seed and Series B.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining in. Ashish, if you can briefly introduce yourself and your firm.
I'm Ashish Taneja. I'm a partner with DrowX Ventures. We're an early stage B2B focused fund based out of India. We come in what we call the scary round, which is the first institutional round, and work very closely with the founding team to kind of make something out of an idea.
Awesome. Madhav.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Madhav. I'm part of the emerging tech team at Omidyar Network India. I've worked here 6 years. So Omidyar Network is an early stage investment firm which focuses on technology-led and technology-enabled businesses in mostly mass market utilitarian products and themes. We've invested about over $1 billion globally, and in India we have invested across 50 or 60 companies, about $300 to $400 million. In terms of stage, we mostly target, again, early stage seed and Series A would be our focus.
Awesome. Yagnesh?
Hi guys, this is we are in very early stage of fund based out of Mumbai. We just have launched last year in 2019. And we've successfully so far funded about 20 companies. We come in as the first check, very much like Ashish said, but much smaller ones. And then we work alongside companies, mentor them, get them to their next rounds. And that's typically the format. Pretty sector agnostic, B2B, B2C both. So yeah, that's about us.
Thank you so much for joining. Giulianna, if you can briefly introduce you and Dripper Startups.
Sort of how I here. So basically,
Giulianna, your voice is breaking, so that there was some.
1 second. Is that better?
Much better.
Okay. The background of travel hospitality. So I'm currently based out of Singapore, and we are actually not a fund, but we are trying to syndicate. So we have 9 locations.
Giulianna, again, the funny thing, People ask, is it audible? It's audible clearly, but the next time it doesn't happen. So, Giulianna, till the time you get that, I'll just, Arpit, if you can briefly introduce, yeah, Arpit, if you can briefly introduce yourself.
Not better?
Yeah, much better. Now you do it then.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I've been having problems all day. But again, we're off the backbone of travel hospitality. And so more or less, we are a syndicate. We have 9 locations around the world. And what we aim to do is democratizing the fundraising experience so that, you know, an entrepreneur in, say, the Manila ecosystem can fundraise in Estonia or in the United States. And since we have access to all of these locations, we are able to successfully match entrepreneurs to investors anywhere in the world. So we've been around. We launched in April with a lot of success. And yeah, we've gotten a lot to see sort of, you know, very pre-Series A is sort of our sweet spot where we're able to help these founders.
Awesome. Arpit, if you can briefly introduce yourself and you're from.
Hello everyone, thank you Jatin and eChai for inviting us. My name is Arpit. I work for an early stage venture capital firm called Boom Ventures, again based in India. Quite a few of my regular colleagues are right here. Hi Ashish, hi Madhav, of course hi Jatin and so on. It is so Jatin, as you know, we are an early stage venture capital firm focused on India market primarily. We have had about 250 million under assets under management, been around for 10 years. Our core focus is largely tech investing, but we do B2C as well as B2B, and I am primarily looking at healthcare and deep tech at this point. Awesome. In terms of check sizes, we have been started writing a little later, more like $1 million checks. This was our core for us. We used to do it a little earlier. Sometimes this is the first institutional round into a company, sometimes it is not, and we're okay with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. To pull off such programs, the most important part is speakers accepting the invite and committing their time. So thank you so much for that. We'll do more like a rapid fire where you can just a minute try to answer your questions. So one of the thing that is how you got into venture capital. So now that people just wanted to know, but now people see that could be a good career option also. So Nadia, how did you get into venture capital?
I think like a couple, I've been in Gobi for like 4 years. I think like before that, it's really hard to actually know like how to get into venture capital, especially in Southeast Asia. So I kind of like took a kind of like a rule, it's just kind of like mixed up. So I actually studied science in uni, and then I actually went into banking like most of the people. Probably thought that I would actually do like financial services or like whatever the whole my whole life. But I figured it's not for me. And then I think that's actually like during the rise of one of the unicorn here called Gojek. And then it just kind of like opened up my eyes to actually a whole new world, right? Other than financial services or even like business related career. So I actually joined one of the edutech startup here called Ruang Guru. And I think that's kind of like opened up the opportunity to actually become a VC. So I think like VC is actually kind of like my fits into my what I like doing every day. So before, like when I was kind of like working in a startup, I think it's actually kind of like a very niche, right? You have a role that you have to do like every day. Well, I'm kind of like a generalist myself. So when I kind of like work in VC, I kind of like become kind of like trust what I wanted to do in my life because I'm more kind of like a generalist, and it kind of like look at it into like the whole sector perspective instead of just like a role.
Yep. Madhav, what was your road to venture capital?
Yeah, so I started my career in investment banking and was mostly focused on what they call TMT, and wherein there was there was always a technology vertical, and so that's essentially what sort of sparked my interest. And then when I was sort of interviewing for buy side roles, which is essentially investing, there was always an option of getting into growth equity or venture capital. And I chose this simply because it was so different from what I was doing, which was mostly sort of late stage buyout and IPO kind of deals. And moreover, I think it was always for me, it was about the people, and the people who sort of interviewed me. I thought they were really nice, and I continue to think that. I think that's a very important thing, that in venture capital, it's very important to like the people, and your thinking should resonate with them. I think that's something that is extremely important. And even more so now that I think about it 6-7 years later after joining.
Yep. Awesome. Ashish?
No, I don't know if this is a rapid fire. I think I can go on and on with the reasons, but let me
fireside chat on that.
Let me try to summarize it. The first time I want to say that, I think I always wanted to do this, right? But kind of growing up, the interest was similar, but, growing up, the venture industry in India at least was non-existent, right? So my interest was more around being a turnaround guy, putting capital, working with companies and, kind of converting them, right? And broadly speaking, I think I'm an entrepreneur at large, right? I've attempted multiple times, build a couple of businesses, but, few things, when raising capital, there were some very, very strong biases in India. And I'm talking about early, when the consumer trends were picking up, when the venture space was picking up, 2006, 2008, that kind of time frame. So it was still very nascent, the industry. But I think a few things kind of came up, right? So, the first one, and these are biases which did not appeal to me. First one, there was a clear preference that, if you're from a top league college, IIT, IIM, come and pitch to us. I did not like it. Maybe because I'm an accountant by training, it just, felt that, you kind of go to a bunch of VCs and they look at your professional degree and your background and they just kind of cross without even listening to what you've got to offer. The second was that, if you have an idea which has been successful elsewhere in the world, come and pitch it, right? So, everybody was all ears for copycat businesses, but, innovation was something people were not willing to bet on, right? So, come out with a bold idea, come out with an innovative idea, they weren't many takers. The markets changed, but, broadly speaking, some of these things still appeal, right? The third piece was that, like it or not, experience was a disadvantage. Yeah. So, if you're late 30s, early 40s, that's not a good time to kind of start. That's not the kind of, you can't be an entrepreneur. Come out of college, and, that's what, So being an entrepreneur, I learned a few things, and, these kind of biases kind of came into being, and that kind of led to, building up GrowX grounds up as a foundation, which kind of looks at innovative ideas, bold, passionate people, and, irrespective of where you come from, what you got to offer. Yeah.
Awesome. Yagnesh?
Yeah, so much like Ashish, I think I'm an accountant by profession, did my CA before and then worked for a couple of large corporate houses arranging funding. So all that was done and I got an opportunity, actually that was my turning point of working for Bessemer Venture Partners. Bessemer, as you all know, is a large VC firm out of US and multiple countries present. So I worked with them for a couple of years and learned the ropes of VC, and that stayed with me for a long time, even though I switched back to corporate finance work. And then I met Sanjay Mehta, who's the founder of Mehta Ventures, who we all kind of sat down a couple of years back and then decided to start this whole seed stage fund. And we saw really a pain point in current startup ecosystem that not many funds were actually backing companies right from early on. I mean, right from bootstrap founders weren't really getting money from funds. I mean, you would have to be partly successful in a certain manner to kind of get funds from any large VC. So we saw this gap and kind of decided to start a seed stage fund, very small checks, work with founders because these guys, as you know, need a lot of grooming, a lot of mentoring takes place, and then that's what I really enjoy, working with founders. So we came up with this whole idea about 100x VC, and we started this late last year. So that's what brought me into VC space.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Giulianna, Driver started a venture syndicate. So what led you into that?
Yeah, that story is kind of complicated, but I originally kind of got into the scene on the entrepreneurial side. So originally from the States, I sort of dabbled in my own startup, was in the PE scene for a while, hopped over to the angel investments because I wanted to deal with earlier stage companies. Found my way to Singapore and then was in the fintech, again, entrepreneurial side for a large robo-advisory out of Hong Kong. And then I think, my love for the startup side, but really interested into sort of, the whole numbers aspect led me to a bridge of a startup venture position, which is, again, not necessarily a fund, but it is sort of a startup within a startup trying to help startups. So I think I found my way home.
Awesome. Arpit?
Yeah, thanks, Jatin. Jatin, I have been involved in startup ecosystem since 2007 in India, and of course, as you know, have grown with this. I happen to have joined hands with a few friends of mine, and we started Headstart Network, which is India's largest community of startups. So always grounded in entrepreneurs and seen their struggles from very beginning. Myself eventually also started up, although a failed attempt back in 2010. And since then, I have been in venture industry all this while, last 6.5 years in Bloom. So yeah, I mean, this always feels very much like home. And if there is any closer to your purpose that you could find, for me, this is it. This has been it for last 8-10 years, and it always doesn't feel like work at all. So I just enjoy the fact that I have a chance of helping startups grow and making them succeed. That you have to invest in them, assist, by the way.
Thank you so much. And one of the idea of this session is founder perspective, not a pitch. So in your experiences, all of you, if you can share any specific examples of how a startup reached out to you and you ended up funding them, or what was that one specific incident and the journey like, so people get the context on how it had happened. We start with you, Arpit, this time. Like one specific anecdote you want to share.
So there have been all kind of instances. Some people who are friends have become our portfolio. Some people who are approached us via some connection, some referred in by another venture capital investor. Maybe Ashish would have referred a company, Madhav would have referred, and so on. And that keeps happening for us. One case, which again, unfortunately, this is the first case top of my mind, and I definitely want to share, is that there's a company called UnoCoin, which is India's largest crypto trading platform. And the founder of the company, Sunny, approached me on Twitter and asked me if back in 2015 we would be interested in looking at Bitcoin. And most people had not heard about Bitcoin back then, right? And people, at least in India, it was still a very new concept. I said, okay, our new technology, this is something I love to do. Let me take a look at a new technology company like Bitcoin and see what this can build. So one thing led to the other, eventually funded them in 2016. But this is my first, and so far I think the only example where someone approaches on a social media platform and it led to funding. Of course, we have all a bunch of companies approaching us through incubator route or referral route, but this one stood out. One thing that I would recommend to most founders who are listening to this session is that it will always help, in case you're looking for funding, to take referral from someone who we trust. So for example, if there's a portfolio company that we think highly of, and if that founder is referring you, probably we'll pay good attention to you as compared to not, because there is some degree of both filtering, which the founder would have done, and his own credibility, her own credibility in the picture, which I think matters a lot. So if you're a founder, please take an inbound referral, always works best for most VCs.
Awesome. Madhav, Omidyar network has a phenomenal portfolio. So any one specific incident?
Thank you. Actually, I think this is a good question, because this is the usual ways are everyone knows what they are. But essentially, there was this, I think I'm going to build on what Arpit said. There was this startup in LA, which, read one of the reports which we published. And I was, I was one of the I had co-authored that. And what we were saying in that report sort of resonated with what they were trying to do. And their largest market ended up being India, despite the fact that they were based out of Santa Monica. So it was fascinating. They made the trek, and I really liked what they were doing. And we ended up sort of investing because they had seen this report on LinkedIn, which was shared which was shared sort of widely, and they read it and they saw my name, and they actually reached out to one of my closest friends at Matrix, and they're like, we want to meet Madhav, and can you introduce? Do you know him? And he's like, yeah, I know him. So it was a interesting coincidence.
Content marketing, Madhav.
Sorry.
Content marketing for you.
Yes, the startup is called Wing. If you guys ever get a chance, you should use their product. It's video caller ID. Essentially, it's True Caller but video based. So it's very interesting.
Yagnesh, 100x VC has multiple cohorts, but one specific startup that stands out for you?
Yeah, well, we've been the new kids on the block compared to most of the others right now. But I mean, yeah, one instance that I can remember is in our first class. I mean, we do classes of 10, 20, 30 companies, and our class who company called Real Project. So Real Project,
Yagnesh, we missed.
Yeah.
Yagnesh, we missed out.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, now clearly.
Yeah, so just met this gentleman called Shashank, who is this company called Renal Project, and very nascent. I mean, small dialysis centers attached to hospitals. So the problem was very close to my heart, and we've seen multiple dialysis patients and guys who get dialysis done, and how critical it is and how repetitive the process is. So got really attracted to this gentleman, and then met him, and then eventually we ended up funding him. And we're currently working very closely, and just the press release just came out for his next round as well. So I mean, glad to see this guy going places a bit and then closing the next round. So I mean, that's one thing that where a personal problem, I could identify that in a startup, and then we ended up funding the startup. So that was a good moment. Kind of felt good about that. And I mean, so that's really what happens to you when you are in a venture capital space, and you meet all kinds of companies, but some of them really kind of are close to your heart. So I mean, this is one such a company that I can talk about.
Awesome, thank you so much. Nadia, any one specific startup story that you would want to share, how they approach you or you ended up investing in them?
I think we're actually kind of different because we're actually kind of like later stage. So most of the one that we had actually kind of like referral or people that actually approach us in LinkedIn. So we actually met like a lot of companies that actually approach us with LinkedIn with messages. I think like that kind of like differentiate them as well. I think we had like a lot of friend requests from LinkedIn as well, right? But some messages that they actually put the note in the request actually kind of like make a difference. So yeah, it's kind of like different, I guess.
Okay. Giulianna, you mentioned about, you help startups in Estonia raise funds in Singapore and vice versa. So any one specific startup story you would want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, I'll share with you sort of a recent one that's kind of my favorite. So I'm based out of Singapore here, and there was an individual who was raised in Argentina, and he lives in Bali, and he came to Singapore for a visa run and got stuck due to COVID. He actually was staying out of Singapore, and so he had nothing better to do, so he decided to fundraise. So we got in contact with him through our space, actually. And I also love the story because he's not tech, and we primarily deal with tech companies, obviously. So the company's called Pangaea, and it's a sustainable towel company. And they managed to raise a sizable amount through an investor that we connected them to, which was Repra, out of Singapore as well. And so it was all happened within the time span of him staying here within 2.5 months. He's now back in Bali. So it was quite like a quick pit stop on the COVID train. And yeah, we made it happen, which was really fun for us.
Brilliant. Ashish, any one specific startup story?
I think maybe two. Yeah. One, which also happened to be a first investment in Israel. I was at an event, and this was one of the after work drink session, and just was chatting with a bunch of guys. One guy came out with a great story. We ended up spending a couple of hours. Obviously, Israel doing cybersecurity, but very different solution to cybersecurity. And within a week, we committed to post that interaction, and we said yes, we're going to go ahead with that particular investment, right? So there were no referrals, there were no connects. It was just a random conversation, and it just kind of connected, right? Because we were interested in that idea. We were looking for something in that particular space, and came a guy with broadly a similar philosophy and thinking around how to develop a product. Yeah. The other piece I want to highlight is, and most VCs do that, or investors do that a lot, right? One is the reactive piece to saying, approach on LinkedIn, approach on Twitter, an email or something. But I think what we do, and we started doing a lot more, is proactive reach, right? And multiple times we've done where we've kind of broadly headhunted a founder, right? So we know about an opportunity, we will do a full scan to say, what's happening in this particular space, find the top 2-3 guys, and go out and proactively reach out, and in a way, spend time initially to just to get them to know our firm better. So it's a reverse pitch in a different way. And we've had a couple of instances. One of them is a Bombay-based digital health company called Wealthy Therapeutics. Where we did that. We reached out, we spent time, 6 months, 9 months, and then when the guy was ready, he said, yes, I know you guys, and let's kind of do something together. Yeah.
I have some open-ended question, but probably some of you can take it up. Has that happened that you chased the startup to invest in them?
So many.
Or not chased, or you made the first connect, to show interest in them, and you.
Yeah.
So any
happens all the time.
So now,
this happens all the time. Absolutely.
So how do you then? Yes. So how do you pitch your firm?
I mean, I use it as a measure of success as to how many. Yeah. So I'll start. I mean, I use this as a metric, in fact, to say percentage of inbound versus outbound. For me, outbound is often more interesting than inbound, because it shows that you're reaching out versus waiting for things to happen. And in terms of pitch, right, you need to sort of show that you understand the segment of the space. You spend time doing your work, and you also can add some kind of value apart from just the capital, right? So I think in short way, that's what it would be. Yeah.
Okay. Yagnesh, you want to? And so in a way, typically what happens, startups would approach you. So then you are in a much stronger suit.
But no, actually that changes, Jatin. What happens is, even if the startups are pitching to you, they are not just pitching to you, right? They're pitching to 10 other people. What really happens is that if you like the deal, you obviously want to close fast and start working with them. But then eventually you find out that somebody else is also like the company, and then it becomes a race for the investors to get that company, right? So that happens quite a lot of times, and it's an interesting situation where a company like us, a fund like us, 100x, we are cutting smaller checks, so we will always get outbid by somebody who's cutting a larger check, and then the value proposition needs to be discussed, and the founder has to be convinced that the value that we bring on the table is not just the next round or the investor connect, but also business connects. If it's a B2B company, our own corporate connects through which you can get more businesses which are long-term sustaining, and that goes much longer than just one fundraise. So I think some of these things become very important when you like a company, and this has just happened with us even in class 2 that we are closing. So a couple of such companies, intense amount of, we like the company like nobody, and we really wanted that, and we really did everything that we could to get that. So you have to keep doing this all the time.
Okay. Nadia, you invest in a growth stage startups, and now there is a huge pool of startups who would have raised funds, seed funds in 2018-19, and they are probably on a growth path. What would you advise to those startups? I don't know, what are the things they should have that increases the odds of they getting to the next level?
I think with the growth stage, right, the different thing that we measure is actually revenue. So I think from the seed to Series A to Series B, they actually kind of grow through user traction, product market fit, and then to kind of revenue, right? So I think starting to actually think of revenue when you actually kind of do a startup, it's kind of a good idea as well. So you kind of have the trial and error, and then you had the time to actually do this trial and error before you actually got into the Series B. So I think that's kind of one thing that I would actually advise people when they started to do early stage.
Okay, awesome. Ashish, and on one side, there are a lot of startups. There is a lot of literature about how to create a business plan, how to present it, and So in your experience, how much important the pitch becomes, and if you can share something on that front.
I think, pitch is important, but here the pitch is call it the elevator pitch, the way you kind of summarize the business in a couple of sentences, and, the way you articulate the problem along with that, your approach to solve. I think that's what works, right? So, we all of us get a lot of inbound emails, right? I mean, these emails kind of run into paras after paras with a very detailed deck. Like it or not, we make up a mind the first pass with the first couple of lines we read, right? So, I think that needs to be articulated very well. And, same thing when you're in person, I think that needs to be provided. Once, you've got the initial interest to say, yes, I like what you're solving. I think you may have something in terms of capability or bandwidth to kind of solve for it, then, we'll spend time. And then, to be honest, sometimes deck is not even material, right? It's more the conversation. It's how, we as investors always learn from founders, right? One thing I often say is that if, I reach a point very quickly that I believe that I know more than the founder, that's a no for us. Yeah. Every meeting, you got to reach a stage where the founders kind of bringing out a particular nuance on the domain, on the subject, which you say, this makes sense. It did not occur to me. And I think that's fundamentally important. So it's a conversation, less the deck. And for me, the most important thing is the pitch in terms of how you present, the first couple of lines on the business.
Okay. Arpit, Bloom is in a way full stack VC, if you can say that.
Yeah.
A lot of other services also. So what was the thought setting up that? What was the thesis for you?
So, Jatin, as you all know, in India, there are not too many firms which have focused a lot on giving services. However, when Bloom was created back 10 years back, Karthik and Sanjay, when they were starting it, they took inspiration from some of the top VC firms in the US. Two of them are first round capital and also Andreessen Horowitz, who have a lot of people on their own system, on their own roles, which add value to functional aspects of the startup. The whole the premise and the hypothesis is that when you are an early stage company, it requires a lot more hands and requires a lot more skill than people would typically have as founders. I mean, typically you would expect founders to be good at maybe sales or business and maybe in terms of product, but they will probably not have help in terms of hiring, ability in terms of finance or legal issues or even fundraising. So a lot of these things have become now what is called as our platform services. We have had a very good run with this system over the last 8 odd years of our running a platform. Today, almost everything that a founder would want is getting served by our platform. Again, we are also unique in a way that we are able to offer these not really not entirely on Bloom, because we are a small fund, can't afford so many people, but there are almost 70 people who are employed into our platform company called Constellation View, and they offer legal, hiring, finance, and so many other services which are useful to the portfolio. And it is very interesting because, even though today, back then the market wasn't as large and there were not too many firms focused on this. Even today, there are not too many firms which have the context of startups and are very passionate about it. But a Constellation Blue experiment has taken off in a big way. There are certain other services, for example, community, business development, and corporate development that we provide by my colleagues who are on Bloom side. And for that, we don't generate any revenue, but it's been a fabulous experience. All our portfolio companies have used them, and they have gotten various degree of benefit by having them. I think it's a great idea. Probably everyone should eventually will do it. I see that some firms are beginning to do it in India, and probably more firms will do it tomorrow.
Awesome. And probably next, probably you can limit your answer to 2 minutes so we can do this entire round. With your firms, what kind of startups you are interested in looking at now? If there are startups watching and they are the right fit, they can approach you. And what are the kind of startups you are interested in exploring more, where you can potentially invest or help? And how should they approach you? What is the best way to reach out to you? Giulianna?
Yeah, so since we're a little bit different and we're primarily buy side, so we very much look out for our investors in this sense, which are, a lot of VCs, a lot of angels to help connect them. Primarily our sweet spot, I would say, is, somewhere pre-series A, raising anywhere from, or even early seed stage. I think the most amount of companies that typically we see are raising anywhere from a couple 100,000 to up to 3 mil. I think that's primarily where we see. I think anything interesting to us, again, we're sort of sector agnostic, looking out for our partners in that sense, but we are also sort of on the startup side for any that we see that are, from our ecosystem, and we really do position them for any investors that, have a really strong thesis to match this startup. So I think anything along those lines, all of those are interesting to us, but we partner from everywhere from, high net worths to angels, incubators, accelerators, the VCs, all the way to debt funds. So everything's interesting to us. We're here to help every single startup and every single entrepreneur.
And best way to reach out to you would be?
I'd say the best way to reach out to us, easiest way to get through the noise is to directly apply to us, or you can email me directly, or you can direct any of my associates, anyone on Draper Startup House. You can find us through there very easily.
Okay, awesome. Nadia, what could be the ideal startups for you at this stage, and how can people reach out to you?
So we're actually looking more into like supply chain, especially the very basic primary needs like FMCG or even fresh goods. And we're also looking at EduTech and healthcare more. Like the best way to actually reach us is probably link in with a note, right? Instead of just a usual request. And you can actually find our main email from the website as well.
And this would be startups from Southeast Asia, or startups from India could also be a good potential?
So we haven't covered India yet, but we're actually doing China, Southeast Asia, Middle East, and Hong Kong.
Okay. Is there a plan to get into India?
Probably after COVID.
Because half of the audience that we have, because we started from India, it would be from
There are actually a lot of companies that we actually discuss with that actually coming from India and then actually expanding to Southeast Asia. So that's actually something that we're looking at as well.
Okay, awesome. Ashish? There was a news about GrowX funding startup. So you've been in a funding spree in a way.
Right? No, I think none of that. No, it's fairly straightforward. Yeah, I mean, we're a very clear B2B focused. So if you're in that particular domain, we take a sector agnostic approach. The thinking is to be the first institutional partner. So when you're kind of thinking of your first round of capital, ping us. And it's straightforward. Reach out to any of the partners, or best just kind of drop us an email, and the founders will definitely get a response. Yeah.
Awesome. Yagnesh, you have a cohort-based approach, but do people have to be in part of the cohort to get funded, or what's
Yes. So basically, yeah, I mean, our cohorts keep we call it the classes. So all the classes are back to back. So we recently closed class 2, and today only we kind of opened applications for class 3. So any founder, I mean, as I told you earlier, right? We are sector agnostic, very early stage. Bootstrap founders can approach us, if they are at a certain stage, not just the idea, but having done something beyond that would really help to kind of us understand the problem statement and the solution that is being proposed. And there is one single email that any founder can email us on, which is pitch@100x.vc. So pitch@100x.vc is the email. Everyone can, those who have something ready, can share the details on this particular email, and our evaluation team will get in touch with them soon.
Okay. Arpit has a detailed note on how people can approach him on his LinkedIn profile. So that was interesting. Arpit, what kind of startups are ideal for you? Like if you see them, you'll just wire the money. And how
so, I think it becomes very difficult to give a plan, to give a framework in which if a company comes and it will quickly go through, because unfortunately we're becoming far more institutional than we used to be, and which means that there's only not just one thing that we have to like. We have to like a lot more things about the company. Therefore, there's a process, thesis building, and all that. What we like, we have been talking. We're one of those we have actively been talking out in public. Like recently, we published a fintech thesis. Before they published an edtech thesis, we also published a blue collar thesis. So whatever we have been researching on, whatever areas that we think are interesting, we have been talking about them on social media and also our blog. I think that is a good point to start with. However, one important in terms of what I am personally interested in, and my colleagues will, for example, someone looking at education, someone looking at fintech, someone looking at marketplaces. I am looking at deeper technology plays which are more IP-led. It could be in any industry. It could be hardware, drone. It could be software, medical AI. It could be also biotech. Anything that is covered broadly in what is called a deep tech. I am interested highly in that. I also look at partly in mobility, and I look at partly in healthcare also.
Okay.
This is my interest area, but of course, anything that is interesting to you, I will leave my email ID on the chat, and please feel free to reach out.
Yep. Thank you so much. Madhav?
Yeah, so I think we do everything except gaming and entertainment. So if you ask me what the focus areas are, I think it's clear, right? Agriculture for me, for my colleagues, it's health tech and education. In terms of how folks, I think LinkedIn, I'm fairly responsive on LinkedIn, direct message in case you don't have my email. So email or LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach out. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So this is one of the things we try to do when we have these panels where we open up a part where panelists can ask questions to each other. So we get to know what experts want to know from each other. So Ashish, if you were to ask question to one of the panelists here, who could that be and what question that would be?
I want to ask a question to Arpit. How much weight has he lost in this lockdown? No, we'd just love to understand how the market in Southeast Asia, this is for Nadia, has reacted, from the current pandemic, right? I mean, are investments back? Are VCs aggressively pursuing opportunities? How's the scene unfolding?
Yeah, I mean, like that's a very interesting question. I mean, like in general, right, VC works very differently compared to like corporate, so we don't actually feed of like revenue and sales. We actually kind of like do have a fund structure, but in Southeast Asia itself, I think we are actually kind of different because we're more like many countries into one compared to like one country. So some countries, I think some would actually be characterized by the government, the trust in the government, and also like the policy as well, right? And then so with the government, like Singapore or even like Vietnam as well, and Thailand, they actually kind of like do a very strict policy since the start of COVID. So they actually kind of like block all the access and everything. And then they started to open up again with countries that are more like in the developing area, which is like Philippines or us, Indonesia. They actually kind of like start to go back and like open up. But it just feels like it's kind of like a long way to go. So most of the startup are actually kind of like started to try to pivot since like a couple months ago to actually cater more into like fresh good FMCG things that are more in the essentials space compared to like retail, luxury, entertainment, not like entertainment, retail, luxury, or online to offline that was kind of like pretty big before COVID.
Okay. Giulianna, if you were to ask question to any of the panelists, if you want to take this up.
Yeah, I think this is always a fun opportunity. No one specifically, but I would say because, we do have a branch in Bangalore as well. And I know this is primarily an Indian webinar of sorts. What are the biggest, any COVID trends that you're seeing or how this isn't directed at anyone in particular, so I'm just going to direct it at everyone. But is there anything of particular that, you guys are seeing as a result or any great innovation that you're seeing because of COVID in the India ecosystem?
Yes.
Anyone.
So everyone, this is a good question because they would be at the forefront of getting to know which innovation is coming out.
Yeah.
Sorry, Arpit, please go ahead.
Okay. So, Giulianna, I think the answer is kind of obvious. How we are looking at our portfolio, and we have all kind of sectors represented in it. We are clearly seeing that there is a strong tailwind behind two sectors, which is one is education, edtech. We have a company called Unacademy, which has become quite large during COVID. And then there is a company called Class Plus, which is also doing quite well. Then there's healthcare, in which we have seen good tailwinds. Our companies called Dito and Health Assure and PHP all are seeing some significant tailwinds, and then there is growth. There's also grocery segment, the essentials of the e-commerce category. There's a company called Milk Basket, which has grown almost 60-70% during the COVID times and continues to grow. So very significant shift in consumer trends in those sectors. So definitely there is a tailwind and those are doing well. Travel, of course, is not doing well, as you can imagine. Wherever we had travel and even touching travel, obviously is not doing well. Incidentally, one of our companies today announced that they were a software for small hoteliers, and they've acquired two other companies, consolidated them in their umbrella. So that is also happening in travel.
Yagnesh, you want to take this?
We are seeing like a few trends now with a lot of news. I mean, a lot of guys got a lot of time to think about what's next, and some of these startups got smarter and started working on the next big thing. Which, I mean, one of them just came across in class 2 for us, which was dealing with mental health. So I think there is a growing situation organizations are seeing a lot of transition in terms of work from home. We already see that. What typically happens is mental health is becoming more important now. So I mean that seems to me a big opportunity, and we're kind of chasing that as well. So also the home economy, which is kind of growing. That's a new segment that's come up. Anything that has to do with home economy, anything that supplements that. So I think that's the next big thing. So a couple of those trends, we are seeing interesting companies who are kind of thinking ahead already, and starting to give solutions, working both in the B2B, B2C space, and providing these like mental health and anything to do with home economy. So these are two clear trends. Apart from what Arpit just said, one of our portfolio companies in EdTech recently got funded. Within a matter of 4 months, they kind of increased revenues 10 times. So I think these kind of growth, unprecedented growth we are seeing. I mean, these kind of this will keep happening in the short term, and also slightly in the long term as well. So we're seeing those trends as well. Agri-tech is, I think, coming up as well. So we're quite bullish on agri-tech as well.
Arpit, if you were to ask a question to one of the panelists, so we'll come
okay, let me take an attempt to ask a question. Like Giulianna, hi. You guys are running a co-working space, I believe. It's like a community of entrepreneurs. Do you have a global network? And if yes, how do you engage with? How do you make this come alive across various locations?
Yeah, so we're a little bit different than co-working because we were sort of beginning entrepreneurial hospitality, which was sort of like a new category all in and of itself for fundraising entrepreneurs who are taking meetings and need low-cost accommodations, but are also looking to network and go to events, which is sort of how eChai actually came into our ecosystem as well. And so, yeah, we definitely have 9 locations that spans Southeast Asia, Europe, and the United States. Very recently. And so we are in 9 international cities. Our Bangalore location, we had 2. I think we're now, we sort of consolidated and making them bigger. And so how we sort of, combine our international ecosystem is, we have ventures associates in all these locations. And originally the thought was, for all of these, I've been here for about a year. And so we set up a very quick experiment to sort of see the quality of deals that were coming through the doors. And about 60 to 70% of people who were coming through the space were fundraising in some sort of capacity. And so we had a large also network of informal investors that were also always through the space for networks and events, and had really great relationships with the incubators and the accelerators. When we very quickly learned that the deals were actually of decent quality, the entrepreneurs were raising sizable amounts. And so we sort of engage our our international communities through funding. We have an academy. We are also part of the Draper Network, which has 23 global funds, which is also has a very large presence in India as well. We also have different, we utilize Draper University. And we sort of, put a very strong focus on a lot of the startups that come through to sort of connect them. If they're too early, then we send them to consultants, incubators, and accelerators, other educational aspects. If they're Series C, Series B, we have our Draper funds, as well as 300 other international investors who we partner with, as well as other syndicates such as Kubo, in Manila. And we had a large pitch competition with MDEC out of Malaysia. And we very much look to stimulate all of these ecosystems, no matter how early or advanced. There's someone out there in our ecosystem for all of them. So no matter where they are, we can sort of help connect and match them to whatever they're needing, whether or not they know it at this time.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yagnesh, you want to ask question to any of the panelists? So this helps me improve my question bank. So next time I moderate a session, ask those.
Can I ask? I have a question for Madhav.
Yes, Ashish, please.
Yeah. No, so first of all, congratulations on the white hat exit. Yeah, and the question I have is, the question I have is $0 to $300 million in broadly 18 months. What's the playbook? What are the learnings, insights, ideas for founders on the call?
Yeah, I wish there were a secret sauce, right? I wish there were a playbook, but really, I think what's worked for us in everything, right? If you see, besides education, whether it's e-commerce or anything, mobility, right, is essentially a thesis-driven approach in which we are painting a picture of what we think the future looks like, rather than being opportunistic. And at least, I think it's also being disciplined about saying no to stuff that you don't have a thesis on. For instance, there's one company of yours which just raised money, which is Pixel, right? And it came up, do we want to look at it? And the thing is that from we thought about building a thesis last year, but we didn't. And if we don't have a thesis, we're not going to go out there and opportunistically just invest, because I think you're being reactive rather than proactive. And I think the approach that we want to stick to, and I think it's worked for everyone across verticals, right? For us, whether it's fintech, education, or health tech or e-commerce or whatever, is to sort of look ahead rather than be reactive at the point when something comes to you, and be disciplined, right? You're not going to chase something just because it's sort of been announced or somebody else is doing it. Okay. That's my only sort of point here.
Nadia, you want to ask question to any of the panelists?
So yeah, I mean, I'm actually kind of like probably one of the one that from Southeast Asia other than Giulianna, right? Probably you wanted to kind of know as well, after this, have you started seeing what actually the companies that are working towards the new world after COVID? Have you actually kind of have the confidence to actually bet on someone that would actually come out from COVID?
Yeah, we have invested. We have led a round in a company. I have not met the founder. This is one of the biggest checks that we've written. And that has happened completely on Zoom calls.
Oh, wow.
Yes, we have begun. And very scary, I was getting on a review call with them. And I realized that the relationship is not yet strong enough to really force them, to take my point a little strongly. So yeah, there are challenges. I don't know if this is going to become normal for us, but it has started.
Yeah, Arpit, Nadia, we've completed our class 2 completely on Zoom calls. I mean, not all 10, 12 deals that we have done in class 2 have been on Zoom. I mean, we have yet to meet. I mean, that's one thing that we miss completely. Something that you can feel, touch when you meet people, when you meet founders, that body language. I mean, some of it, you do miss that. And I mean, but regardless, we had to get on with the job, try to make the best of the situation, try to assess things, but we did it. I mean, and I'm guessing that's true for everyone, right? I mean, work doesn't stop. I mean, one can't just obviously keep reviewing portfolio companies beyond a point. So, I mean, there has to be new deals that has to get done, and there are several opportunities that we are seeing in India. So, and obviously, for want of COVID relaxation, we obviously don't want to miss on any of them. So I think that's how it works.
And Yagnesh, there was a question also, and since you invest in very early stage startups, what are the top 3 criteria that you will hit on?
So for us, very early stage, seed stage, as you know, everyone would agree here, is that obviously the founders have the highest of weightage in terms of the deciding factor, right? So we look at founders very closely because we have very less to look at. I mean, unlike Nadia, who looks at numbers where there is traction, multiple years, performance is there. We practically don't have that. So a lot depends on what the founders have done earlier in their past life. Uh, Also, what they've really understood. Is there a really large market opportunity? So that's the second thing that we look, because no matter how good the founder is, if you really don't have a big market opportunity in front of you, uh, one can't achieve much. So that's the second thing. And then the conviction of, the whole business model and a conviction of multiple X returns. Unless we really feel this could be a multi-bagger or this could be a multiple X returns, given the excellent business model that they are, kind of chasing. These are the three things that we really look into startups.
Okay, awesome. Madhav, you want to ask any question? Let's move on to the last one.
No, I mean, I'm good. I just, I mean, in a, I just like to, on a,
You have to tell us the secret sauce. Huh?
on a scale of 1 to 10, how optimistic are you that things will open up and become normal by January? I'm just curious, given all of us are in, in some ways, we try and paint a picture of what the future will look like. So I'm just curious.
This is the best question because it will be answered by just one number. Arpit?
I will. So, Madhav, you may not, people in India are probably more scared than this, but last 2 months I've ate out, went to a mall, shopped, went to CP, roamed around, took our parents to shop to the mall, ate out. So, and we have been to office. I'm not in office today, but I will be in office tomorrow. I was in office yesterday. Our colleagues are back to office. We are not doing meetings yet, but it's only a matter of time. So yeah, there's no reason why things will not come back to normal. And flight I have not taken yet. I'll definitely take someday.
Okay, Yagnesh, on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, I mean, completely 9 or 10 clearly, because this, and I had said this even in April when things were really scary. And I mean, the pace of recovery is generally faster than what you assume. So I mean, that's been history, in given any situation. So things recover much faster than what you assume them to be. And people are far more resilient than what we think. So I think I'm on that side.
Arpit and Yagnesh, with your answer and explanation, you are given the peer pressure to other panelists because now they'll get influence. So do you have contact?
I also went outstation. My hometown is close by, so took my car and we went to Agra, my hometown. So yeah, everything is checked. The only thing left is Uber and flight.
Well, Giulianna, on a scale of 1 to 10, how optimistic you are?
I think VCs are in a general game of optimism.
Yeah.
You have to be. But, besides that fact, I have, calls every week with Yangon, Manila, Lisbon, Estonia, Austin, Texas, and I'm in Singapore, and every single one of us is in a vastly different state of, rewinding back to, starting in Singapore. I was in Europe when I saw the entire continent collapse. So I'm optimistic that things, at least in our environment, in the startup ecosystem, are going to continue to get funded. I think that's a very complicated question for all of the regions that, I'm in. I think Singapore is doing a good job, but they're also very strict and very conservative about what we can do and where we can go and how many people we can meet. So I'm going to give this a strong consolidated 8, caveated with plus or minus 5 in each location that I mentioned. I don't know.
Awesome. We want to finish exactly on time. So Nadia and Ashish, you just give the numbers because I want to ask one more question. Nadia, on a scale of 1 to 10, how optimistic you are?
9.
9. Wow. Ashish?
I'm a 4 for January 2021. Just to get over. But I'm seriously, I'm not for January
Ashish,
2021. I'm not.
Ashish is trying to bring the average down.
The thing, it doesn't matter. It's a long conversation, and maybe interest of time, we'll just skip it. But I'm not there at an 8 or a 9. Far away from that.
Okay, awesome. So we are towards the last part. So typically we try to do this thing. So think of this as a university class, and you are invited as a chief guest in a convocation, but you were supposed to give one-line message for that only. So Ashish, what would be your one-line message to founders? The convocation.
Maybe Nadia and Giulianna will not get this, but these days I say Geo or Gina though.
Live and let live. Live and let live.
No, but Geo because of God knows what's happening. Geo or Gina though, live and let live. Sure.
Awesome. Nadia, what would be your one-line message to the founders in a convocation style? The grand one.
I think like during the big change like this, it's a great time to actually create startups.
Awesome. So what we will do, the moment last speaker ends the sentence, I'll end the call. So we'll end the Zoom call on a high. Else it becomes very awkward to end the Zoom calls. Giulianna, your one-line message.
So I actually am going to sort of echo Nadia here. I think it is the best time to fundraise and build relationships because, if it's only up from here, guys, you guys can do this. Now's the time.
Awesome. Yagnesh?
So, I keep saying this to all these guys whom we have funded as well as, will. So first survive. I think the key here is there'll be a lot of ups and downs coming across. So first survive. And obviously, while you're surviving, keep your plans ready for that next leg of growth. But the key is survival here.
Awesome. Arpit?
Yeah, so echoing Yagnesh, I was beginning to say, survival is success for startups. So the most important thing to focus on, COVID or not, is to focus on survival.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Madhav, we are exactly on time. The moment you end your sentence, I'll end the call.
Yeah, so, I mostly agree with everyone. I just think that, at least in India, we don't know how, what the domino effects of, such a long lockdown has been. And while I'm optimistic that everything will resume, we just don't know I think the real picture will only emerge in 6 to 12 months hence, because, a lot of people have suffered, but I'm cautiously sort of optimistic. That's
awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time, and see you on social media. And
Thanks, Jatin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.